The senior trauma surgeon threw the patient chart across the nurse's station, and it landed 6 inches from Amara Brooks' head. Everyone in the ER stopped to watch, waiting for the quiet black nurse to finally crack under the relentless mockery she'd endured for weeks. Dr. Wallace stood there with that same condescending smirk, the one that said she didn't belong here, that she was just another hire who'd wash out before the month ended. But as Amara stood there in her navy blue scrubs, her face calm and unreadable, not one of them noticed the way she measured exits, or how her breathing remained perfectly controlled. They had no idea who they were really dealing with, because the past she'd buried was about to land on their front lawn in a military helicopter that would shake the entire hospital to its foundation. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The morning air carried the sharp smell of disinfectant and burnt coffee as Amara Brooks pushed through the glass doors of North Harbor Medical Center. Her black sneakers made no sound against the polished linoleum. She kept her eyes forward, her shoulders square, moving with a precision that looked almost choreographed. Her scrubs were navy blue and perfectly pressed, her hair pulled back into a tight bun that revealed the clean lines of her face. She was late 20s, with dark brown skin and eyes that seemed to take in everything while revealing nothing. The nurse's station buzzed with morning chaos. Phones rang, monitors beeped, and voices overlapped in that particular rhythm of a hospital waking up. Amara approached the desk slowly, her ID badge clipped to her hip. She waited for someone to acknowledge her presence. "Can I help you?" A blonde woman in her 40s glanced up from a clipboard. Her name tag read Linda Carter, charge nurse. Her tone suggested she'd rather not help at all. "I'm Amara Brooks. Today's my first day. I was told to report to you for orientation." Linda's eyes traveled from Amara's face down to her shoes and back up again. The assessment took 3 seconds. The judgment took less. "Right. The new hire." She didn't smile. "You're taking the night rotation. Thursday through Monday. Trauma wing. That's fine. Most people complain about that schedule." "I'm not most people." Linda's eyebrow lifted slightly. She turned to a younger nurse sorting medication trays. "Jessica, show her to the locker room. Bottom row, far corner. Combination locks only." Jessica was friendlier, or at least trying to be. She walked Amara down a narrow hallway lined with bulletin boards covered in OSHA posters and staff birthday announcements. "Don't worry about Linda. She's tough on everyone at first. Well, maybe tougher on some." She gave Amara an apologetic smile. "You have experience in trauma?" "Some." "Where'd you work before?" "Different places." Jessica waited for more. When nothing came, she cleared her throat. "Well, here we are. Locker room. Bathrooms are through that door. Break room's down the hall. Vending machines are terrible, so bring your own food if you can." Amara nodded. "Thank you." The locker room smelled like old shoes and industrial soap. Metal lockers lined 3 walls, most of them decorated with stickers or photos taped to the inside of the doors. Amara walked past the empty lockers near the entrance and the ones in the middle rows. She chose one in the far corner, bottom row, half hidden behind a support beam. She tested the lock twice before putting her bag inside. As she closed the door, she caught her reflection in the small mirror someone had hung on the adjacent locker. She looked tired. She always looked tired. But her posture was perfect, her movements controlled. She flexed her fingers once, then curled them into fists. Old habit. She made herself stop. The first 4 hours passed in a blur of introductions she knew wouldn't stick and tasks designed to test her. Linda assigned her to restock supply closets, update patient boards, and run labs to different floors. Grunt work. Amara didn't complain. She moved through the hospital like she was mapping it, her eyes catching exit signs, stairwell locations, security camera angles. She noticed which doors required key cards and which ones didn't latch properly. During a brief lull, she stood near the trauma bay entrance and watched the organized chaos. A nurse shouted for more gauze. A doctor barked orders at a resident who looked barely old enough to drive. Machines beeped in overlapping rhythms that somehow made sense to everyone who worked there. "Brooks!" Linda's voice cut through the noise. "Stop standing around. Go help with the intake in Bay 3. Amara moved quickly. Bay 3 held a man in his 60s, conscious but pale, clutching his chest. Two nurses were trying to get him started, while a young resident fumbled with the EKG leads. The man's breathing was shallow and rapid, his lips starting to turn blue. "Sir, I need you to stay calm," the resident said, his own voice shaking. "We're going to take care of you." The man's eyes rolled back. The monitor screamed. The resident froze. Amara stepped forward. Her hands moved with absolute certainty, checking the airway, repositioning the man's head, finding the pulse point on his neck. "He's crashing. Start compressions." Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the panic. "I didn't call for compressions yet," the resident said. Amara ignored him. She began chest compressions with perfect rhythm, counting silently, her face completely calm. One of the nurses jumped in to bag him. 30 seconds later, the man gasped and his eyes fluttered open. Color returned to his face. The monitor settled into an abnormal but stable rhythm. The resident stared at her. "How did you know?" You could see it in his neck veins. And his color. He needed circulation support immediately. Amara stepped back, wiping her hands on her scrubs. "You should intubate him now. He's not stable yet." The resident nodded slowly and reached for the intubation kit. The two nurses exchanged glances. One of them whispered something Amara couldn't hear. 10 minutes later, the patient was stable and being moved to the ICU. Amara was washing her hands at the sink when she heard the footsteps behind her. Heavy, deliberate. Nurse Brooks. She turned. A man in his 50s stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing surgical scrubs and a white coat that looked expensive. His name tag read Dr. Gerald Wallace, Chief of Trauma Surgery. His face was red. "Yes, sir. Did you just perform a medical intervention without physician oversight?" The patient was coding. "I stabilized him until—" "You were a nurse, not a doctor, not a resident, not even a paramedic as far as I can tell from your file." His voice rose with each sentence. Other staff members slowed down as they passed, pretending not to listen. "You do not make clinical decisions in my ER. You follow orders. Do you understand me?" Amara kept her face neutral. "I understand. I don't think you do." Dr. Wallace stepped closer. "I've seen your type before. Overconfident. Think you know better than the people who actually went to medical school. You're dangerous. And if I see you overstep again, I'll have you removed from this hospital. Are we clear?" "Yes, sir." "Now, get out of my sight." Amara walked away slowly, her hands steady at her sides. She didn't look back. She didn't look at the nurses who'd witnessed the dressing down. She walked straight to the supply room, pushed the door, closed behind her, and stood in the dark for 30 seconds. Her breathing was controlled. For counts in. Hold for 4. For counts out. She rolled her shoulders back, feeling the pull of old scar tissue under her scrubs. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light, automatically cataloging the room. One entrance. No windows. Camera in the northeast corner with a blinking red light. Blind spot near the bottom shelf. She reached up and touched the thin chain around her neck, hidden under her scrub top. The weight of it was familiar, grounding. She didn't pull out. Instead, she took one more breath and opened the door. Miguel Torres found her 2 hours later, restocking 4 supplies in a hallway closet. He was older than her, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes and the build of someone who used to be in much better shape. "Hey, you're the new night nurse, right?" "Yes. I'm Miguel. I work nights too. Heard you had a rough start with Wallace." He leaned against the doorframe. "Don't take it personally. He's like that with everyone. Well, everyone who makes him look bad, anyway. I wasn't trying to make him look bad. I know. That's what makes it worse." Miguel smiled. "Look, night shift is different. Quieter. Less politics. You like it better. And for what it's worth, Jenny told me what you did in Bay 3. That was good work." Amara nodded once. "Thank you. You prior service?" The question landed like a physical thing. Amara's hands stilled for just a fraction of a second. "Why do you ask?" "Just a vibe. I did 8 years in the Navy. You've got that way of standing. Like you're always ready for something." "I'm just tired." Miguel studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. Anyway, welcome to North Harbor. It gets better. Usually." He left her alone. Amara finished restocking in silence. The rest of his shift crawled by. Linda assigned her to discharge paperwork, medication counts, and cleaning duties that should have gone to housekeeping. Every task was designed to remind her of her place. Amara completed each one without comment. At the end of the shift, she changed back into street clothes in an empty locker room. As she was leaving, she paused and looked back at the locker she'd chosen. Bottom row, corner, out of sight. She'd picked it without thinking. Old habits ran deep. The night shift started 3 days later. Amara arrived 30 minutes early and found Miguel already at the nurse's station, charting on a laptop. "You're keen," he said. "I like to be prepared. Night shift's slower, less drama, but when it hits hard." He gestured to the mostly empty trauma wing. "Right now we've got 2 post-ops, 1 observation, and a psych hold waiting for transfer. Pretty quiet for a Thursday." A younger woman approached, white coat over scrubs, stethoscope draped around her neck. She had red hair pulled into a messy ponytail and looked exhausted. "You must be Amara. I'm Dr. Leah Price, trauma intern. Welcome to the night's circus." "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You'll be stuck with me for the next 6 months." Leah smiled. "Fair warning, I ask a lot of questions and I make a lot of mistakes. Try not to let me kill anyone. I'll do my best." The first few hours were exactly as Miguel described. Quiet. Almost too quiet. Amara found herself relaxing slightly, falling into the rhythm of vitals checks, medication rounds, and documentation. She worked efficiently, anticipating needs before they were voiced. Around 2 in the morning, the comm shattered. "Security to 4 West. Security to 4 West immediately." Amara's head snapped up. 4 West. The psych hold. She was moving before she made the conscious decision, her legs carrying her down the hallway at a controlled run. Miguel was right behind her. They arrived to chaos. A patient, male, approximately 40 years old and powerfully built, had broken free from his restraints. 2 security guards were trying to corner him, but he was thrashing wildly, overturning equipment, screaming incoherently. A nurse cowered behind a desk, her face white with fear. "Stay back," one of the security guards shouted. "He's got a scalpel." The patient lunged toward the nurse. She screamed. The security guards moved too slowly. Amara didn't think. Her body reacted with muscle memory older than her nursing license. She closed the distance in 3 strides, got inside his reach, and used his own momentum against him. Her hand locked around his wrist, controlling the weapon. Her other arm snaked around his neck in a modified hold that cut off blood flow without damaging the airway. She turned her hip and used leverage to bring him down gently, controlling his descent so he wouldn't hit his head. 5 seconds, maybe 6. The man went limp in her arms, unconscious but breathing. The scalpel clattered to the floor. Amara immediately released the hold and stepped back, her hands raised. "He's down. Check his airway." The room was silent except for labored breathing and the distant beep of a monitor. Everyone stared at her. One security guard's mouth hung open. Miguel knelt beside the patient, checking his pulse. "He's fine, out cold but stable." "I'm sorry," Amara said quickly. "I didn't mean to overstep. He was going to hurt someone." "Overstep?" The security guard shook his head. "Lady, you probably just saved Rachel's life." The nurse who'd been cornered was crying now, relief mixing with shock. Leah appeared in the doorway, took in the scene, and looked at Amara with new eyes. "Where did you learn to do that?" Leah asked quietly. "Self-defense classes. A long time ago." "That wasn't self-defense. That was training." Amara didn't respond. She helped the security team secure the patient properly, checked his vitals herself, and then quietly excused herself to document the incident. In the break room, her hands finally started shaking. She gripped the edge of the sink and breathed through it. "For counts in. Hold. For counts out." She was slipping, getting too visible, making mistakes. The door opened behind her. She didn't turn around. "I'm not going to ask what you're running from," Miguel said, "but I want you to know that you're safe here. Whatever it is, I'm not running from anything." "Okay." He didn't sound convinced. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're on our team." When Amara returned to the floor, the whispers had already started. She caught fragments as she passed. Did you see how fast she moved? Where did a nurse learn that? I'm telling you, something's weird about her. Linda appeared from around a corner, her face pinched with disapproval. Nurse Brooks. My office. Now. The office was barely larger than a closet. Linda closed the door and crossed her arms. That was quite a display out there. He was going to hurt someone. Security is trained to handle those situations. You are not. I reacted. I'm sorry if. I don't want your apologies. I want you to understand your role here. Linda's voice was cold. You're a nurse. Not a hero. Not special. You do your job, follow protocols, and you don't make the rest of us look incompetent. Do you understand? I understand. Good. Because if I see another incident like that, I'll recommend your termination myself. Linda opened the door. You're dismissed. Amara walked back to the nurse's station, her face carefully blank. She could feel eyes on her, assessing, judging, wondering. She sat down at a computer terminal and pulled up a patient chart, pretending the words made sense. The rest of the night shift passed without incident. When dawn broke over the city, Amara gathered her things from her locker and walked to her car alone. She didn't notice the black sedan parked 3 rows away or the man inside taking photos. The next week settled into an uneasy pattern. Amara kept her head down, spoke only when necessary, and completed her tasks with quiet efficiency. But the hostility was growing. Dr. Wallace found reasons to criticize her work. Linda assigned her the worst shifts, the most difficult patients, the jobs nobody else wanted. During a particularly brutal Friday night, Wallace threw a patient chart across the nurse's station. It hit the wall 6 inches from Amara's head. This is garbage, he shouted. Half the information is missing. What kind of incompetent? He turned to see who'd charted the patient, and his eyes landed on Amara's name. Of course. Brooks, get over here. Amara approached slowly. Did you chart this patient? Yes, sir. This is unacceptable. Incomplete. Sloppy. Are you trying to get us sued? Amara looked at the chart. Every section was filled out. Every box checked. Her documentation was flawless. Sir, I documented everything according to. Don't argue with me. His face was red again. You're slow, you're careless, and frankly, I'm not sure you're competent enough to work in this ER. One more mistake and you're out. Do you hear me? Yes, sir. She walked away before he could see her jaw tighten or her hands curl into fists. In the supply room, she pressed her forehead against the cool metal shelving and counted to 100. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. A patient arrived by ambulance, unconscious, listed under the name David Wright. Construction accident, the paramedics said. Fell from scaffolding. Multiple contusions, possible internal bleeding. Amara took one look at the chart and moved to his bedside. The man was middle-aged, muscular, with skin weathered by sun and scars. As she began her assessment, she noticed his tattoos. Not the usual civilian ink. Military unit insignia. Trident, jump wings, and on his inner forearm, partially obscured by dried blood, numbers and letters that made her freeze. She knew that sequence. The man's eyes opened. They locked onto hers. Recognition flashed across his face, followed immediately by something close to panic. He tried to sit up. Sir, please stay still, Amara said, but her voice had changed. Lower, more controlled. She positioned herself so her body blocked the view from the hallway. You need to stay calm. You're in a hospital. Who brought me here? His voice was rough but alert. Too alert for someone with his injuries. Paramedics. They said you fell. I didn't fall. Amara's hands continued the physical exam, but her eyes never left his face. Your vitals are stable. BP 130 over 85. Heart rate 72. Respiration's normal. You're oriented to person and place. She emphasized certain words slightly, a pattern that wouldn't mean anything to most people. The man's breathing steadied. Affirmative. Pain scale. Manageable. 6. She nodded once. I need to start in 4. Fluids and pain management. Doctor will be in shortly. As she prepped his arm, she spoke quietly. How many? Just me. So far. Extraction point? Compromised. Leah appeared in the doorway. How's our construction worker? Amara's face went professionally neutral. Stable. Starting fluids now. Dr. Price, this is Mr. Wright. Sir, this is Dr. Price. She'll be overseeing your care. Leah approached with a tablet, reviewing his chart. Mr. Wright, can you tell me what happened? Fell off some scaffolding. Stupid mistake. Any loss of consciousness? Don't think so. Leah examined him carefully, professional but thorough. When she palpated his abdomen, he winced. We're going to need imaging. Possible spleen or liver involvement. Let's get him to CT. I'll prep him, Amara said. As the orderly arrived to transport the patient, the man gripped Amara's wrist. His hand was strong, deliberate. To anyone watching, it looked like the gesture of a frightened patient. But his fingers pressed against her pulse point in a specific pattern. 3 short. Too long. 3 short. Emergency code. Old protocol. He leaned close and whispered so quietly she almost missed it. They're looking. You were never supposed to surface. Amara felt the blood drain from her face. The man's eyes held hers for one more second before he released her wrist and allowed himself to be wheeled away. She stood frozen in the trauma bay, her heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. Miguel touched her shoulder, and she nearly struck him, stopping herself at the last possible second. Whoa, sorry. Didn't mean to startle you. Miguel stepped back, hands raised. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm Fina. Just tired. That guy seemed to know you. He was confused. Head injury, right? Miguel didn't sound convinced, but he didn't push. Amara finished her shift on autopilot, her mind racing. She kept checking the patient board. David Wright. Surgery scheduled. Expected in recovery by morning. When she returned for her next shift, she went straight to the surgical floor. Asked for Wright's room number. He's not here, the floor nurse said. He should be in recovery. He was transferred. Where? The nurse checked the system, frowning. That's weird. There's no transfer note. No discharge paperwork. It just says he was moved to another facility, but there's no receiving hospital listed. Can you check again? I'm checking. It's like his entire file got... Wait. The nurse's frown deepened. This is really strange. His chart is here, but all the detailed notes are gone. Just basic admission info. Who did you say you were? Nobody. Wrong patient. Saw the... Amara walked away quickly, her mind working through possibilities. Transferred without paperwork. Notes deleted. No trail. Someone had come for him. Or he'd left voluntarily. Either way, he was gone. And he'd warned her. They're looking. She should have felt fear. Instead, she felt something else. Anger. And underneath that, a cold, familiar readiness she'd been suppressing for years. In the break room, Miguel found her staring at nothing. You want to talk about it? Talk about what? Whatever's got you spooked. That patient yesterday. The way you've been checking the surgical floor. I'm just being thorough. Amara. Miguel sat down across from her. His voice was gentle. I did 20 years in the Navy. I know what it looks like when someone's running. I know what it looks like when someone's hiding. And I know what it looks like when someone's past catches up with them. Amara met his eyes. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I want you to know you're not alone. Whatever it is. He stood up. And for what it's worth, I ran your name through an old Navy buddy of mine who works in personnel. It came back empty. Not red flagged. Just empty. Like you never existed. Maybe I didn't. Or maybe someone made sure you disappeared for a reason. Miguel paused at the door. Be careful, Amara. Whatever you're mixed up in, it followed you here. After he left, Amara pulled out her phone. An old phone, actually, one she kept powered off in her locker, wrapped in a shirt at the bottom of her bag. She turned it on and waited for it to boot up. No service. No SIM card. Just save files. She scrolled to the voicemails. There was only one, saved years ago. She pressed play. Static. Then a man's voice, distorted by distance and interference. Ghost Actual, this is command. Mission status, terminated. Operational closure confirmed. Personnel reassignment, negative. You are officially separated. You did your job. Stand down. The message ended. Like it always did. Amara deleted it. Again and again. She deleted it hundreds of times. But she kept restoring it from backup. Some part of her needed to hear it. To remember that it ended. That she got out. She powered the phone off and buried it back in her bag. When she opened her locker the next morning to change after her shift, something fell out. A piece of paper, folded once. She picked it up slowly and opened it. Block letters. No signature. No logo. We know where you are. Amara's hand didn't shake. She read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. Her face was calm as she changed into her street clothes and walked to her car. But as she drove away from North Harbor Medical Center, she checked her mirrors every 30 seconds. And when she got home to her small apartment, she didn't turn on any lights. She sat in the dark, staring at the note, and felt the weight of the chain around her neck. The past wasn't behind her. It had never left, and now was getting closer. The threatening note had been in Amara's pocket for 3 days. She hadn't thrown it away, hadn't shown it to anyone. Each shift, she'd touch it through the fabric of her scrubs, feeling the folded paper like a talisman, a reminder that her carefully constructed invisibility had failed. She arrived for her Thursday night shift and immediately sensed something was different. The ER had an unusual tension, like the air before a thunderstorm. 2 men in dark suits stood near the main entrance, clipboards in hand, pretending to review something. Their posture was wrong for hospital administration. Too rigid, too alert. Miguel caught her eye from the nurse's station and gave a small shake of his head. Not now. Not safe. Amara clocked in normally and began her rounds. An hour into the shift, the ambulance bay doors burst open. Paramedics wheeled in an unconscious man on a gurney. 2 more men in dark clothing flanking the stretcher like guards. Male, approximately 35, unresponsive, found collapsed at a construction site. The lead paramedic rattled off. Vitals are stable, but he hasn't regained consciousness. No obvious trauma. Possible toxic exposure or overdose. Bay 2. Leah called out, jogging alongside the gurney. Let's get a tox screen and a full workup. Amara moved to help transfer the patient, and that's when she saw his arm. Partially covered by the blood pressure cuff was a tattoo. The ink was faded but unmistakable. A trident overlaid with an anchor. Navy SEAL insignia. Her hands continued working automatically, but her mind had gone into overdrive. The 2 men in dark clothing positioned themselves on either side of the bay. One of them pulled out credentials. We're private security contracted with his employer. We'll need to stay with him for company liability purposes. Leah glanced at the ID without much interest. That's fine. Just stay out of the way. Amara connected the monitors and started the 4-line. As she worked, she spoke in the calm, professional tone every nurse learned. Sir, if you can hear me, you're in the hospital. You're safe. We're going to take care of you. Standard script. But then she added, almost as an afterthought, initial assessment shows positive response to external stimuli. Patient demonstrates appropriate defensive positioning even while unconscious. Recommend standard observation protocol, echo level clearance. It was gibberish, medical-sounding nonsense. Except echo level wasn't medical terminology. It was old military code for compromised environment. One of the security men shifted his weight. What did you just say? I was noting his physical responses for the chart. Amara said smoothly. Muscle tension patterns can indicate level of consciousness. The man stared at her for a long moment. What's your name? Nurse Brooks. How long have you worked here? Leah looked up from her tablet, frowning. Is there a problem? No problem. Just being thorough. But Amara had seen it. The brief flicker of recognition when she'd used the code phrase. These weren't security guards, and they hadn't corrected her terminology because they didn't know it was wrong. She finished her tasks and stepped out of the bay, her heart rate elevated but controlled. In the hallway, she pulled out her phone and opened a note. Typed quickly, second veteran. Guarded by imposters. Need verification. She didn't send it. There was no one to send it to. Instead, she deleted it and slipped the phone back into her pocket. Miguel found her restocking supplies 20 minutes later. He spoke quietly, organizing bandages beside her. Those guys with the unconscious patient. They're not right. I noticed. One of them has his sidearm on the wrong hip, like he's not used to carrying, and they keep using the wrong terms. Called the crash cart a medical emergency device. Amara's jaw tightened. You think they're cops? Cops would know the equipment names. These guys are pretending to be something they're not. Miguel posed. And they keep watching you. Why would they watch me? That's what I'd like to know. Amara closed the supply cabinet and turned to face him. Miguel, if I asked you to trust me without explanation, would you? Depends on what you're asking. If something happens tonight, I need you to take Leah and get out of the ER. Don't ask questions. Just go. Miguel studied her face. You're expecting trouble. I'm always expecting trouble. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. The next 2 hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. The unconscious patient remained stable but unresponsive. The fake security guards never left his side, and Amara felt the weight of invisible eyes tracking her movements through every corridor. At midnight, during a quiet moment, Leah pulled her aside. Can we talk? Privately. They stepped into an empty exam room. Leah closed the door and leaned against it, her expression serious. I did something I probably shouldn't have. Amara's face remained neutral. Okay, I ran your name through an old database from when I was doing research for a military medicine grant during my residency. The DoD keeps records of everyone who's worked in combat medical support. Leah paused. Your name came up. That's not possible. It was under a different surname. Sealed record. Attached to Special Operations Medicine. I couldn't access the full file, but I saw enough. Leah's voice was gentle. Amara, who are you? I'm a nurse. You're more than that. And those men out there, the ones watching the patient, they're also watching you. I think you know why. Amara closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were harder, more focused. Drop it, Leah. Please. For your own safety. Are you in danger? Everyone around me is in danger, which is why you need to stop digging and forget what you saw. I can't do that. Then you're making a mistake. Leah reached into her pocket and pulled out a printed page. There was something else. A sealed tribunal record from 6 years ago. One seal listed as missing, status classified. The age matches yours. The timeline matches when you started nursing school under your current name. She held out the paper. I think someone made you disappear. Amara didn't take the page. Burn that. Not until you tell me the truth. The truth will put you on a list. And people on that list have a habit of disappearing. Before Leah could respond, the overhead speakers crackled. Security to Bay 2. Security to Bay 2 immediately. Both women ran. They reached the bay to find the patient awake and thrashing violently. One of the fake guards was on the floor, holding his jaw. The other had his hand inside his jacket, reaching for something. Everyone stay back, the standing guard shouted. The patient's eyes were wild, scanning the room like a trapped animal. Then they landed on Amara. Something changed in his expression. Recognition mixed with desperation. Get them out, he rasped. They're not real. They're not. The guard lunged forward with a syringe. Amara moved on pure instinct, intercepting his arm, redirecting the momentum. The syringe clattered to the floor. The guard swung at her, and she ducked, swept his legs, and had him pinned in 3 seconds flat. The entire ER froze. The second guard pulled his weapon. A real weapon. A handgun that had no business being in a hospital. Everyone on the ground. Now, Leah screamed. Miguel appeared in the doorway and immediately raised his hands. Hospital security came running, but stopped cold when they saw the gun. Amara released the guard slowly, hands visible. You don't want to do this. Shut up. The gunman pointed his weapon at the patient. You're coming with us. No, the patient said. His voice was stronger now, more focused. I know what you are. You're cleanup. You're here to make sure I don't talk. Last chance. Come quietly, or we put you down right here. Amara stepped between the gun and the patient. The movement was small, but absolute. You're not taking him. Move, or I drop you first. You won't shoot. Too many witnesses. Too many cameras. This goes public. Your entire operation falls apart. The gunman's jaw clenched. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then Linda's voice came from behind them, shrill with authority. What is going on in my ER? The distraction was all Amara needed. She moved like liquid, closing the distance, controlling the weapon hand, using leverage and momentum to disarm him before he could react. The gun hit the floor. She kicked it away and stepped back, hands raised. Hospital security, take these men into custody. They just threatened patients and staff with a firearm. Real security guards swarmed in, restraining both men. The ER erupted into chaos. Leo was pale, shaking. Miguel stared at Amara like he'd never seen her before. Linda pushed through the crowd, her face crimson. "Brooks, what have you done?" "Stopped an armed assault. You assaulted security personnel. They pulled a gun in the ER. I don't care what they did. You're a nurse. You don't engage in physical altercations. You don't disarm people. You call security and you protect yourself." Linda was screaming now. "You're suspended. Effective immediately. Get out of my hospital." "Linda, she saved that patient's life," Miguel said. "I don't want to hear it. She's reckless. She's dangerous. And she's done." Linda pointed at the exit. "Out. Now." Amara didn't argue. She walked to the locker room in silence, changed into her street clothes, and emptied her locker. When she emerged, Miguel was waiting. "That was some serious training," he said quietly. "Self-defense classes. Stop lying to me. I know military CQC when I see it. That wasn't self-defense. That was combat conditioning." Amara met his eyes. "You're right. It was. And now you know why I can't tell you more." "What did that patient mean when he said you were never supposed to surface?" "It means I made a mistake coming here. And now other people are going to pay for it." She walked past him toward the exit. Behind her, she heard him whisper, "Ghost actual." She didn't turn around. The suspension lasted 3 days. 3 days of sitting in her apartment, watching the street below, checking every car that parked too long. On the second day, unmarked vehicles began appearing near the hospital. Black SUVs with tinted windows. Men in casual clothes who moved like operators. On the third day, she got the call. "Miss Brooks, this is Richard Halvorson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at North Harbor Medical Center. I'd like to meet with you. Today, if possible." "About what?" "Your employment status. And some concerns that have come to our attention regarding your background." Amara's apartment was suddenly too small. "What concerns?" "I prefer to discuss this in person. Can you come to the hospital? Say 2 o'clock. She knew it was a trap. Knew she should run. But running meant abandoning Miguel and Leah, meant leaving questions unanswered. "I'll be there." The administration wing was different from the clinical areas. Carpeted hallways. Framed artwork. The smell of expensive coffee instead of disinfectant. Halvorson's office was on the 3rd floor, corner suite, with windows overlooking the city. He was 50s, fit, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Brooks, thank you for coming. Please sit." Amara remained standing. "You said you had concerns about my background." "Indeed." Halvorson opened a folder on his desk. "Your employment application lists previous work experience at 3 different hospitals. I had my assistant contact them. 2 have no record of you ever working there. The 3rd has your file flagged with a federal security notice. I worked at those hospitals." "Under what name?" Amara said nothing. "Your background check also came back with some irregularities. Gaps in your timeline. Educational records that don't quite add up. And then there's the incident 3 days ago where you displayed combat training inconsistent with civilian nursing experience. I stop an armed man from kidnapping a patient. Or you assaulted private security who were trying to protect him. They weren't security. They were contractors. How would you know that?" Halvorson leaned forward. "Unless you have experience identifying military contractors, which would be unusual for a trauma nurse." The room felt smaller. Amara's eyes tracked the exits, the windows, the camera in the corner. "Miss Brooks, I'm going to be direct. I believe you falsified your employment application. I believe you're using an assumed identity. And I believe you're hiding something significant about your past." He closed the folder. "Now, I'm prepared to offer you a generous severance package if you resign quietly today. No questions asked. No investigation. You walk away and we all forget this happened. And if I refuse, then I'm obligated to report my concerns to the appropriate federal authorities, which could result in charges of identity fraud, falsifying federal employment documents, and potentially much worse, depending on what they find." Amara's jaw tightened. "You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a way out. Why do you care? Why go through all this for one nurse?" Halvorson's smile faded. "Because you're a liability. You ask questions. You notice things. And you've drawn attention to yourself in ways that make people uncomfortable." "What people?" The kind who make significant contributions to this hospital's funding. The kind who value discretion and stability. He slid a document across the desk. Sign this. Take the money. Disappear again. Amara looked at the severance agreement. $50,000. A confidentiality clause. A non-disclosure agreement that would legally bind her to silence about everything she'd witnessed. What if I told you I can't disappear? She said quietly. What if I told you that people are already looking for me, and signing this paper won't change that? Then I'd say you're in more trouble than I thought. She reached for the paper. Her hand hovered over it. Then she pulled back. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, I make the call. Amara left the office feeling like the walls were closing in. She took the elevator down, walked through the main lobby, and stepped outside into the afternoon sun. That's when she saw them. 3 men, positioned at different points around the hospital entrance. Not together, but coordinated. Watching. Waiting. She turned and walked back inside. Found Miguel in the cafeteria. I need your help. He took one look at her face and stood up. What's wrong? The hospital COO just tried to blackmail me into resigning. And there are people outside who definitely aren't here for medical care. What kind of people? The kind who know what I am. Miguel glanced around the cafeteria. We should find somewhere private. They found Leah in the medical library, researching something on her laptop. When she saw Amara, she immediately closed the computer. You came back. Temporarily. Amara pulled out a chair. Leah, that database you accessed, the sealed tribunal record. Did you save it? I took screenshots. I need you to delete them. Wipe your browsing history. Remove any trace that you ever looked. Why? Because whoever sealed that record is watching this hospital. They've been watching since that first patient disappeared. And now they know I'm here. Leah's face went pale. What are you mixed up in? A mission that went wrong 6 years ago. People died. The operation was buried. I was supposed to be buried with it. Amara's voice was steady, but her hands were clenched. I thought if I stayed quiet, if I kept my head down and didn't make waves, they'd leave me alone. I was wrong. So what do we do? Miguel asked. You do nothing. You forget this conversation. You go back to work and you don't get involved. Too late for that, Leah said. Those men who tried to take the patient, they saw me. They know I was there. And the guys outside saw Miguel talking to you, Miguel added. We're already involved. Amara closed her eyes. This was her nightmare. Dragging innocent people into something that would destroy them. There's something else, Leah said quietly. She opened her laptop again, despite Amara's warning. Pulled up a document. I kept digging after our conversation. Found something in the hospital's financial records. North Harbor received federal grants 6 years ago for trauma research, specifically for combat medicine and emergency response protocols. The grants came through a shell company. What kind of shell company? The kind used for classified military contracts. Leah turned the screen. And the person who signed off on those grants, who helped integrate them into the hospital's operations, was Richard Halvorson. The pieces clicked together in Amara's mind. The hospital wasn't random. She wasn't here by accident. I was placed here, she whispered. Someone wanted me at this specific hospital. Someone who knew about my past. But who? Miguel asked. Before Amara could answer, the lights flickered. Just once. Then the overhead speakers crackled with an emergency announcement. Code Silver. All personnel, Code Silver. Secure all exits. This is not a drill. Code Silver. Armed intruder. Amara was on her feet instantly. Get to the ER. Find cover. Don't be a hero. She ran toward the main corridor. Hospital security was already mobilizing, directing people away from the front entrance. Through the glass walls, she could see the 3 men she'd spotted earlier. They were moving toward the building. A security guard grabbed her arm. Ma'am, you need to evacuate. I'm a nurse. I need to help with patients. All non-essential personnel need to evacuate now. Amara pulled free and ran toward the stairwell. She had to get to the ER. Had to make sure Miguel and Leah got out. Had to. The lights went out completely. Emergency generators kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing everything in red backup lighting. The intercom system died mid-announcement. Someone had cut the power. Amara's training took over. She moved through the darkened corridors with perfect confidence, using emergency exit signs and muscle memory. She reached the ER to find it in controlled chaos. Nurses were moving patients to interior rooms. Doctors were shouting orders. Security had locked down the main entrance. Linda saw her and pointed. You're suspended. Get out. There's an armed intruder situation. I am helping. Like hell you are. Security. But security was busy. And in that moment, something caught Amara's attention. Through the ER windows, beyond the panic, she saw him. The patient from days ago. The one who'd vanished. David Wright. He was standing in the parking lot, bloodied, limping but alive. And he was looking directly at the hospital. Directly at her. He raised his hand. Made a signal. One she recognized. Danger close. Extraction impossible. Hold position. Then he collapsed. Amara moved without thinking. Burst through the ER doors into the parking lot. Voices shouted behind her, but she didn't stop. She reached the man and dropped to her knees beside him. You shouldn't have come back, she said. Had to warn you. His breathing was labored. They found the list. Everyone from the operation. They're eliminating witnesses. Who is? Not who. What? It's bigger than us. Bigger than the mission. He gripped her wrist with bloody fingers. Ghost, they used the hospital. For all of it. Human trials. Classified drugs. We weren't just operators. We were test subjects. Amara's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? The mission. The ambush. It wasn't enemy action. It was termination protocol. They wanted us dead because we knew too much. His eyes were fading. You got out because they thought you wouldn't remember. But I remembered everything. That's why they're hunting us. Who's hunting us? Halvorsen. He's not hospital administration. He's oversight. He's been here the whole time, watching, making sure nobody talks. Behind them, the sound of rotor blades began to build. Distant at first, then growing louder. The man smiled weakly. Guess the cavalry finally showed up. Amara looked up. Her heart stopped. A Navy helicopter was descending toward the hospital, approaching the front lawn with emergency lights blazing. Hospital security scattered. People poured out of the building to watch. No, Amara Guisperth. No. They're looking for you, the man said. Your unit. They finally figured out you're alive. I can't go back. I got out. Nobody gets out. You know that. He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. Tell them the truth. Tell them what Halvorsen did. What this hospital really is. His hand went slack in hers. Amara checked for a pulse. Found nothing. She closed his eyes gently and stood up, her scrubs covered in his blood. The helicopter was landing now, right on the front lawn. Dust and debris swirled in the rotor wash. Windows rattled. Car alarms shrieked. Through the chaos, Amara saw figures emerging from the aircraft. Navy personnel in uniform. The real kind. The kind she used to stand beside. Hospital staff flooded out of the building, phones raised, recording everything. Linda stood near the entrance, her mouth open in shock. Miguel and Leah pushed through the crowd, trying to reach Amara. And in the center of it all, one of the Navy officers raised a hand to shield his eyes from the dust, looked around the gathered crowd, and spoke into a radio. Amara couldn't hear what he said over the rotor noise, but she saw his lips move, saw him scanning faces. Then he stopped, stared directly at her. He said something else into the radio. 3 other officers turned to look in her direction. The lead officer began walking toward her, his expression unreadable. Amara stood frozen, covered in blood, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses, as the truth she'd spent 6 years burying came crashing down around her. The officer stopped 10 feet away. He was older, weathered with the bearing of someone who'd commanded people in impossible situations. He spoke one word, just one, ghost. Every conversation in the parking lot stopped. Every phone camera turned toward her. Every eye locked onto the quiet nurse who'd been invisible for so long. Miguel's voice cut through the silence. What did he just call you? Amara didn't answer. She was staring at the officer, at the helicopter, at the moment when her 2 lives collided in the most public way possible. The officer spoke again, louder this time. Petty Officer First Class Amara Brooks. Call sign, Ghost Actual. Linda's voice, shrill with disbelief. That's not possible. But it was possible. It was happening. And as the officer raised his hand in a formal salute, Amara felt the weight of 6 years of hiding shatter like glass. The hospital would never be the same. Her life would never be the same. And somewhere inside the building, Richard Halvorsen was watching this unfold, knowing that his carefully constructed conspiracy was about to be exposed. The helicopter's rotors continued to thunder overhead, and Amara Brooks, the quiet nurse nobody respected, stood at the center of a storm she could no longer control. The salute hung in the air like a challenge. Around Amara, the parking lot had gone completely silent except for the rhythmic thunder of helicopter rotors. Hundreds of eyes watched. Dozens of phones recorded. The quiet nurse they dismissed, mocked, and tried to destroy was being acknowledged by the United States Navy in front of everyone. Amara didn't return the salute. She stood motionless, covered in David Wright's blood, her face carved from stone. The officer lowered his hand slowly, his expression shifting from formal recognition to something more cautious. "Petty Officer Brooks, I'm Commander James Garrett. I need you to come with us." His voice carried authority, but also something unexpected. Respect. No. The word came out flat and final. Garrett's eyebrows rose slightly. Behind him, the three other officers exchanged glances. "Ma'am, this isn't a request. We have orders to bring you in for debriefing. There's been a development in your case." "I don't have a case. I was discharged 6 years ago. Your status was changed to missing in action. Classified. We've been searching for you for 3 years." The crowd murmured. Phones captured every word. Linda stood near the entrance, her face pale with shock. Dr. Wallace had emerged from the building, staring at Amara like she was speaking a foreign language. Miguel pushed through the gathered staff, Leah right behind him. "Amara, what's happening?" Garrett turned to him. "Sir, I need you to step back. This is Navy business. She's my colleague. If you're taking her somewhere, I want to know why. That's classified. Then you're not taking her." Miguel positioned himself beside Amara, his stance protective. Amara touched his arm gently. "Miguel, don't. They can't just show up and drag you away." "Actually, they can." She met Garrett's eyes. "But they won't, because I'm not going anywhere until I finish what I started." Garrett studied her for a long moment. The helicopter's rotors were slowing now, the pilot shutting down systems. "What did you start?" "David Wright just died in my arms. He told me this hospital was used for classified human trials. That the mission 6 years ago was a termination protocol, not an enemy ambush. That people are being killed to cover it up." Amara's voice was steady but hard. "So no, Commander, I'm not leaving until I get answers. Those are serious allegations. They're the truth. And the man responsible is inside that building right now, probably destroying evidence." Garrett glanced at his fellow officers. Some silent communication passed between them. Then he spoke into his radio. "Base, this is Garrett. We have a situation. Requesting federal investigative support. Possible criminal conspiracy involving classified operations." He looked back at Amara. "You have 1 hour. Then you're coming with us whether you like it or not. But for now, we'll secure the scene and make sure nobody leaves the hospital." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. If you're wrong about this, you'll face charges for everything from desertion to obstruction." "I'm not wrong." Garrett gestured to his team. They moved with practiced efficiency, coordinating with hospital security to lock down all exits. Within minutes, North Harbor Medical Center had become a crime scene. Richard Halvorsen appeared at the main entrance, his face a mask of corporate concern. "Commander, I'm the COO of this facility. What's the meaning of this disruption?" "Mr. Halvorsen, I need you to remain available for questioning." "Questioning? About what?" "That's being determined." Garrett turned to Amara. "You said he's responsible. Can you prove it?" "Leah can." Dr. Leah Price stepped forward, her laptop clutched against her chest. She looked terrified but determined. "I found financial records. Federal grants for combat medicine research funneled through shell companies. The grants were approved 6 years ago, right around the time of the classified mission Amara mentioned. Mr. Halvorsen's signature is on all the authorizations." Halvorsen's expression didn't change. Those were legitimate medical research grants, completely legal and properly documented. "Then you won't mind if federal investigators review them," Garrett said. "I'll need to consult with our legal team." You can do that from here. Nobody leaves until we sort this out. The crowd was growing. Staff from every department had gathered, drawn by the impossible scene of military helicopters and armed Navy personnel. Hospital administrators huddled together, whispering urgently. Security guards stood uncertain, caught between hospital authority and military command. Linda pushed her way to the front. I demand an explanation. This woman has been lying to us for months. She falsified her credentials, she's violent, and now she's disrupting our entire facility with wild accusations. Ma'am, you need to step back, one of the Navy officers said. I will not step back. This is my ER. Linda pointed at Amara. She doesn't belong here. She never did. And now she's brought this circus to our doorstep. The circus was already here, Miguel said quietly. You just didn't see it. None of us did. Amara looked at the faces around her. Colleagues she'd worked beside. Patients she'd cared for. People who dismissed her, belittled her, treated her like she was invisible. Now they couldn't look away. I need to show you something, she said to Garrett. In the ER. Bay 2. That's where they tried to take the second patient. There might be evidence. They moved inside, the crowd parting like water. The ER was in controlled chaos, patients and staff unsure whether to evacuate or shelter in place. Amara led Garrett to Bay 2, where the unconscious veteran had been held. The bed was empty. The monitors were dark. The entire bay had been stripped clean. He was here, Leah said, just hours ago. They had him under guard. Garrett examined the space carefully. Any security footage? We have cameras, Linda said from behind them. But I'm not authorizing access without a warrant. That can be arranged. Miguel was searching the nearby equipment cart. He opened one of the drawers and froze. Amara, look at this. Inside the drawer was a syringe, still capped. Miguel held it up carefully. This isn't hospital issue. The markings are wrong. And look at the serial number. It's military format. Garrett took the syringe, examining it with a pen light. This is a field sedative, used for tactical operations. How did it get into a civilian hospital? The fake security guards tried to inject the patient with it, Amara said. Before I stopped them. Where are those guards now? Hospital security detained them. Garrett spoke into his radio again. I need those detained individuals brought to me immediately. And someone give me access to this hospital surveillance system. The next 30 minutes moved like a fever dream. Federal agents arrived, flashing credentials and commandeering conference rooms. Hospital administrators scrambled to comply with demands for records, access logs, and personnel files. The detained security guards were separated and questioned. Amara found herself in a small consultation room with Garrett, Miguel, and Leah. The door was closed. 2 Navy officers stood guard outside. I need the truth, Garrett said. All of it. From the beginning. Amara sat down slowly. She'd kept these secrets for 6 years. Carried them alone. Now, with witnesses she trusted, she finally let them out. I was a combat medic. Started in the regular Navy, worked my way into special operations support. I was good at it. Too good. After I saved a SEAL commander's life during a botched extraction, they recruited me for something different. Her voice was steady, clinical, like she was reporting someone else's story. Covert medical operations. I'd go in with teams, provide tactical medical support during classified missions. Off the books. Deniable. Miguel leaned forward. What kind of missions? Extractions. Infiltrations. Sometimes we'd insert into hostile territory to retrieve assets. Other times we'd provide medical cover for psychological operations. She paused. The work was dangerous, but it was clean. We had rules. We didn't hurt civilians. We didn't cross lines. What changed? Garrett asked. 6 years ago, we got orders for a mission in North Africa. Intelligence said there was a terrorist cell planning an attack on U.S. interests. We were supposed to insert, gather evidence, extract. Standard operation. Amara's jaw tightened. But when we got there, something was wrong. The intel was bad. The location was a medical clinic, not a terrorist base. There were doctors, nurses, patients, civilians. Leah covered her mouth. What happened? Our commander questioned the orders. We were told to proceed anyway. Told that the clinic was a front, that they were developing biological weapons. We searched the facility. Found nothing. Just medicine. Just people trying to survive. Amara's hands clenched. Then the ambush came. But it wasn't enemy fighters. It was a coordinated strike. Mortars. Small arms fire. Professional. Someone had set us up. How many survived? Garrett's voice was quiet. 4 of us made it out. I dragged 2 wounded teammates through 3 miles of desert. When the extraction helicopter finally came, one of them died in my arms. The other was captured when we got separated during secondary contact. And you? I was injured. Shrapnel from a grenade. Burns from the explosion I caused to cover our escape. She touched her ribs unconsciously. They pulled me out, patched me up, and then everything went dark. No debriefing. No after-action report. Just a discharge notice and a new identity. Someone buried you, Garrett said. Someone buried all of us. The mission was classified. The casualties were declared training accidents. The whole operation was wiped from existence. Amara looked at him directly, and I thought that was the end. I became a nurse because I wanted to save people the right way. No orders, no lies, just medicine. But it wasn't the end, Miguel said softly. No, because David Wright survived. He escaped captivity. And when he started looking for answers about what happened to us, someone started hunting him. Hunting all of us. Garrett pulled out a tablet and opened a file. Wright's real name was David Chun, former Navy SEAL, listed as killed in action 4 years ago. But he turned up at a VA hospital in Texas 3 months ago, claiming he'd been held captive by a private military contractor. Did anyone investigate? The case was referred to military intelligence. And then it disappeared. Garrett looked at Amara. Someone has serious reach. Someone who can manipulate records, silence investigations, and make people vanish. Someone like Halvorsen, Leah said. He's not working alone. Amara stood and began pacing. The hospital upgrades David mentioned. The classified grants. The shell companies. This is bigger than one administrator covering his tracks. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that the mission wasn't about terrorists. It was about testing. Amara stopped pacing. Human trials. Performance enhancement drugs. Classified medical research that couldn't be done legally. We weren't sent to stop an attack. We were sent to provide cover for illegal experiments. That's a serious accusation, Garrett said. I know what I saw. The clinic had equipment that didn't belong in a civilian facility. Military-grade medical devices. Research labs. And our medic kits have been modified. Extra medications we hadn't requisitioned. Unmarked vials. Miguel pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. 3 months ago, there was a scandal at a military research facility in Virginia. Unauthorized drug trials. Performance enhancers being tested on active duty personnel without consent. The investigation was shut down after 2 weeks. Same pattern, Garrett said grimly. Someone is running illegal research and using military operations to hide it. And this hospital is part of it. Amara looked toward the door, toward the ER beyond. How many patients have been treated here without knowing they were part of an experiment? How many veterans came through trauma with unexplained complications? Leah's face went pale. We need to check medical records. Look for patterns. Unusual drug reactions. Unexpected complications in military patients. Do it, Garrett said. But be careful. If you're right, whoever's running this will do anything to protect it. A knock on the door interrupted them. One of the Navy officers stepped inside. Sir, we've reviewed the security footage. The detained guards were seen accessing restricted areas of the hospital, specifically underground storage near the research wing. Show me. They moved as a group through the hospital, drawing stares from staff and patients. The research wing was in the basement, accessible only by keycard. Garrett's authority got them through the locked doors. The corridor beyond was clinical and cold. White walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of chemicals and filtered air. At the end of the hall was a door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Garrett tried the handle. Locked. Open it. One of his officers used a bypass tool. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Inside was a server room. Rows of black equipment, blinking lights, the hum of cooling fans. But it was what sat on the desk that made everyone stop. A laptop, still powered on. File folders scattered across the surface. and sitting open on the screen was a document labeled Operation Nightfall, Phase 3 Human Trials. Leah moved to the computer before anyone could stop her. She scrolled through the document, her face growing more horrified with each page. This is a complete trial protocol. Dates, locations, subject, identifiers. She looked up. There are over 200 subjects listed. Military personnel from different branches. They were all given experimental drugs without informed consent. Where? Garrett demanded. Multiple locations. But North Harbor Medical Center is listed as a primary trial site. Trauma patients were selected based on injury severity and likelihood of long-term complications. The drugs were administered during emergency care when subjects were too incapacitated to notice. Miguel's voice was hollow. We were giving people experimental drugs and didn't even know it. Not you, Amara said. The research staff. The people who had access to medication storage. The ones who could modify treatment protocols without raising suspicion. Garrett took photos of the screen with his phone. This is enough for federal charges. Conspiracy, human experimentation without consent, falsifying medical records. It's also enough to get us killed, Amara said quietly. Whoever runs this operation has killed to protect it. They won't stop now. As if summoned by her words, the lights in the server room flickered, then died completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. That's not a power failure, Garrett said. Someone cut the feed. His radio crackled with static. Then a voice, distorted but clear. Commander Garrett, you need to evacuate the building immediately. We've detected a gas leak in the basement level. The entire wing needs to be cleared. Garrett keyed his radio. This is Garrett. Who is this? Hospital security. We're initiating emergency protocols. Stand by. Garrett turned to his officers. That's not hospital security. Get everyone out. Now. They moved fast, but the corridor was already filling with a faint haze. Not gas. Smoke. Someone had triggered a fire somewhere in the building. Amara grabbed Leah's arm. Copy those files. Everything. Right now. Leah's fingers flew across the keyboard, downloading data to a thumb drive. The smoke was getting thicker. Alarms began wailing throughout the hospital. We need to go, Miguel shouted over the noise. 30 seconds, Leah said. 20 seconds. The smoke was at eye level now. Amara could hear footsteps in the corridor. Running. Coming toward them. 10 seconds. The download bar crept forward. 5 seconds. The footsteps were right outside the door. The download completed. Leah yanked the thumb drive free. Got it. They burst from the server room into the corridor just as figures appeared through the smoke. Not Navy. Not hospital security. Men in tactical gear, faces covered, weapons drawn. Federal agents, drop your weapons. Garrett shouted. The figures didn't respond. They raised their weapons. Garrett's team reacted instantly, shields coming up, positioning themselves between the unknown attackers and the civilians. Get behind us. Amara didn't hesitate. She grabbed Leah and Miguel, pulling them toward a side corridor she'd memorized weeks ago. Emergency exit. Maintenance access. One of the blind spots she'd cataloged during her first week. Gunfire erupted behind them. Not the sharp crack of pistols. The deeper, heavier sound of automatic weapons. This wasn't intimidation. This was elimination. They ran through the smoke-filled basement, Amara leading them with absolute certainty. She'd mapped this hospital like a combat zone, and now that knowledge was saving their lives. Here, she pushed open a maintenance door. Inside was a narrow stairwell that climbed toward ground level. They took the stairs 3 at a time, Leah clutching the thumb drive like it was made of gold. Behind them, the gunfire continued. Shouts. The crash of equipment being overturned. The entire hospital was descending into chaos. They emerged on the first floor near the employee entrance. The hallway was filled with staff and patients being evacuated, security guards trying to maintain order, alarms screaming. Amara spotted Linda directing nurses. Linda, where's the emergency assembly point? Linda stared at her, still processing everything. The parking lot. East side. Get everyone there. Now. And stay away from the research wing. For once, Linda didn't argue. She nodded and began shouting orders. Amara, Miguel, and Leah pushed through the evacuation toward the east parking lot. Outside, the scene was pandemonium. The helicopter was still on the front lawn, its crew armed and alert. More vehicles were arriving, federal agents in windbreakers, local police establishing perimeter. Garrett emerged from the building, his uniform scorched, his face grim. When he saw Amara, relief flashed across his features. "You made it. What about your team?" "Two wounded. We're pulling them out now." The attackers retreated when reinforcements arrived. He looked at Leah. "Please tell me you saved those files." She held up the thumb drive. "Everything. Good, because we're going to need it." Garrett's radio crackled again. This time, it was genuine Navy communication. "Base, this is Garrett. We have the evidence, and we need immediate protective custody for 3 civilians." He looked at Amara. "You were right. This is bigger than one hospital, and now that you've exposed it, you're the primary target." "I'm not hiding again." "You're not hiding. You're testifying." Garrett's voice was firm. "That data Leah downloaded is enough to launch a federal investigation. But we need witnesses. People who saw what happened inside. People who can connect the dots. Then I'll testify. But first, I finish my shift." "Your shift?" Amara looked at the hospital, at the patients being evacuated, at the staff try to maintain order in the midst of disaster. "I'm still a nurse, Commander, and there are people in there who need help." Garrett stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. "You always were stubborn. Fine. Finish your shift. But you do it with armed escort." "Deal." Amara turned to Miguel and Leah. "You two should go. Get somewhere safe. This is my fight, not yours." "No," Miguel said simply. "We're already in it, and we're not leaving." "Miguel, I'm a veteran too, remember? I know what it means to leave people behind, and I'm not doing it." Leah nodded. "Besides, I'm the one with the evidence. Where I go, it goes." Despite everything, Amara felt something warm in her chest. Not alone. For the first time in 6 years, she wasn't alone. "All right," she said. "Let's get back to work." They walked back toward the hospital together, protected by Navy personnel, watched by hundreds of witnesses. The quiet nurse had become visible. The secret was out, and whatever came next, Amara Brooks would face it not as Ghost Actual, the covert operator, but as the woman she'd chosen to become. The woman who saved lives. On her own terms. The hospital returned to an uneasy version of normal over the next 2 hours. Patients were brought back inside under heavy security. Staff resumed their duties with federal agents watching from every corner. And Amara Brooks, flanked by 2 armed Navy personnel, went back to being a nurse. It was surreal. She checked vitals, updated charts, administered medications, all while wearing bloodstained scrubs and answering questions from federal investigators between patients. The entire ER staff watched her with a mixture of awe, fear, and uncertainty. Nobody knew what to say to the woman they'd dismissed as incompetent just hours earlier. Miguel worked beside her in silence, his movements precise and supportive. Leah had been pulled aside by federal agents to secure the thumb drive and provide testimony. Linda stood at the nurse's station, pale and shaken, her authority fractured by the revelation that her hospital had been infiltrated by a criminal conspiracy. Around 9 o'clock that evening, the overhead code system crackled to life with a sound that made Amara's blood freeze. "Code Blue, ICU room 417. Code Blue, ICU room 417. She was moving before the announcement finished. The room number was familiar. That was where they'd moved the veteran patient from earlier, the one who'd been guarded by fake security before the armed confrontation. She took the stairs 2 at a time, Navy escort struggling to keep up. When she burst into room 417, she found chaos. A nurse was performing chest compressions. A resident fumbled with the crash cart. The patient, a man in his early 40s with military tattoos, was flatlined on the monitor. "How long has he been down?" Amara asked, immediately moving to the bedside. 3 minutes, the nurse gasped. "We've pushed AP twice." No response. Amara checked the 4 line and froze. The bag hanging above the patient wasn't the standard saline it should have been. The label was correct, but the fluid inside had a faint yellow tinge. Stop compressions, she said quietly. What? He's coding. Stop. Now. Amara reached up and disconnected the 4-line. She held the bag up to the light. This isn't saline. Someone switched it. The resident stared at her. That's not possible. These bags are sealed. Look at the seal. Amara pointed to the top of the bag. A tiny puncture mark, barely visible, right through the injection port. Someone injected something into this bag after it was hung. Miguel appeared in the doorway. He took one look at the situation and immediately understood. Air embolism or poison. Amara set the bag on the crash cart. Get toxicology up here now. And seal this room. Nobody touches anything. The resident finally checked the patient's pupils. He's gone. Time of death, 9:14 p.m. Amara stood over the dead man, feeling the weight of another loss. Another witness silenced. His name was Marcus Williams, former Army Ranger. He was part of the same operation as David Wright. How do you know that? The nurse asked. Because I was there too. Within minutes, federal agents had secured the ICU. The 4-bag was tagged as evidence. Hospital security pulled surveillance footage showing a figure in surgical scrubs entering room 4:17 20 minutes before the code. The figure's face was obscured by a surgical mask, but their movements were deliberate, professional. Commander Garrett arrived with 2 FBI agents in tow. This is now officially a murder investigation. We need a complete lockdown. Nobody enters or leaves this hospital without being cleared. The killer is still here, Amara said. They knew where Williams was. They had access to medication storage. And they knew how to move through this hospital without raising suspicion. You think it's staff? I think it's someone who's been here the whole time. Someone we've all seen, but never really noticed. Amara turned to Miguel. Pull up the employee access logs for the past 6 hours. Anyone who entered the ICU, the pharmacy, or the research wing. Miguel moved to a nearby computer terminal and logged in with his credentials. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Okay, I've got 17 staff members who accessed the ICU tonight. 12 nurses, 3 doctors, 1 pharmacy tech, and 1 administrator. Who's the administrator? Miguel's face went pale. Richard Halvorson. He was here 30 minutes ago. Garrett was already on his radio. All units, locate Richard Halvorson immediately. Consider him armed and dangerous. They found Halvorson's office empty. His computer was powered off, his desk cleared. The framed degrees on his wall hung crooked, as if removed and hastily replaced. Behind where his credenza had stood, there was a small floor safe, door hanging open, contents gone. He's running, one of the FBI agents said. He's not running, Amara said quietly. She was examining the office with the trained eye of someone who'd cleared rooms in hostile territory. He's destroying evidence. She opened a closet. Inside, where administrative files should have been, was empty space. Burn marks on the metal shelving suggested documents had been incinerated. He had an escape plan. This wasn't improvised. Garrett touched the wall beside the safe. It was warm. This was done within the last hour. He's still in the building. Or he's using the tunnels, Miguel said. Everyone turned to look at him. The hospital has maintenance tunnels that connect to the city steam system. They run under the entire complex. Old infrastructure from when this place was built in the 70s. Miguel pulled up a building schematic on his phone. There are access points in the basement, near the research wing. Show me, Garrett commanded. They descended into the hospital's underbelly, a maze of pipes and concrete lit by flickering fluorescent tubes. The air was hot and thick with the smell of machine oil and steam. Water dripped from overhead pipes, creating puddles on the uneven floor. Miguel led them through the labyrinth with surprising confidence. I used to do maintenance walks down here when I first started. Most staff don't even know these tunnels exist. The passage opened into a wider corridor lined with old electrical panels and valve controls. At the far end was a heavy steel door marked Emergency Exit. Alarm will sound. The door was propped open with a brick. The alarm had been disabled. Amara moved forward cautiously, her body falling into old patterns. She cleared the doorway, checked corners, assessed the space beyond. The tunnel continued into darkness, sloping gradually upward toward street level. He went this way, she said. Garrett deployed his team. 2 officers moved ahead with tactical lights. The FBI agents followed. Amara stayed close to Garrett, with Miguel bringing up the rear. The tunnel seemed to stretch forever. Then, suddenly, light appeared ahead. Not daylight. The harsh white of LED work lamps. And voices. They emerged into what looked like a small underground bunker. The space had been converted into an office of sorts. Filing cabinets lined one wall. A desk held multiple laptops, all powered on, screens glowing with data transfers in progress. And standing in the center of it all was Richard Halvorsen. He wasn't alone. Linda Carter stood beside him, holding a laptop bag. Her face was red from crying, her hands shaking. When she saw Amara and the federal agents, her expression crumbled completely. "I didn't know," she sobbed. "I swear I didn't know what they were doing. He told me it was just administrative work. Updating patient files. I never knew about the experiments." "Linda," Miguel's voice was filled with disbelief. "She's been moving data for us for 2 years," Halvorsen said calmly. His corporate facade had cracked, revealing something colder underneath. Small transfers. File reorganizations. She thought she was helping streamline hospital operations. "I was just trying to keep my job," Linda whispered. "He said if I didn't help, they'd find a reason to fire me. I'm 52 years old. Nobody hires nurses my age." Garrett stepped forward. "Richard Halvorsen, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, human experimentation without consent, and falsifying federal records." Halvorsen smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You think arresting me changes anything? I'm middle management at best. The people who run this operation have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, politicians, judges. By tomorrow, I'll be released, and you'll be reassigned to counting supplies in Alaska." "Maybe," Garrett said, "but we have the evidence. Operation Nightfall is over. Operation Nightfall is one program among dozens. You found one hospital. There are 15 others. You stopped one trial. There are 30 more running right now." Halvorsen's voice was matter-of-fact. "The military needs performance enhancement. Soldiers who can operate longer, heal faster, think clearer under stress. What we're doing saves lives. You murdered people," Amara said, her voice hard as steel. "You experimented on them without consent. You killed anyone who might expose you. We eliminated security risks." "That's different. David, right, was a security risk? Marcus Williams? The others you've killed? They were acceptable losses in service of a greater mission." Halvorsen looked at her directly. "You of all people should understand that, Ghost. You made those calculations yourself." Amara stepped closer. "I never killed innocents. I never experimented on my own people. And I never hid behind words like acceptable losses to justify murder. You're naive. The world requires people willing to make hard choices, to do what's necessary, even when it's ugly." Halvorsen gestured at the laptops. "These programs have saved thousands of lives. Soldiers who survived injuries that would have killed them. Operatives who completed missions that would have failed. The cost was minimal compared to the benefit. The cost was human beings. The cost was volunteers who knew the risks. They weren't volunteers. They were patients in your hospital, people who came here for help and got poison instead." Amara's hands clenched into fists. "You used this place as a testing ground and convinced yourself it was noble. I convinced myself it was necessary." Halvorsen's composure finally cracked. "Do you know how many soldiers die from preventable injuries? How many operations fail because human bodies have limits? We're trying to push past those limits, to give our people an edge in a world that wants them dead. And who gave you the right to make that choice? Someone has to." FBI agents moved in, pulling Halvorsen's arms behind his back, securing handcuffs. He didn't resist. Linda collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Miguel moved to her side, his expression torn between anger and pity. "Linda, how could you?" he asked quietly. "I didn't know," she repeated. "I thought I was just helping with paperwork. When I realized what they were doing, I was already involved. He said if I told anyone, I'd be charged as an accomplice." Garrett was examining the laptops. "These are still transferring data. Where is it going?" One of the FBI agents checked the network connections. "Looks like an offshore server. multiple encrypted channels. Whoever receives this data will have complete copies of all the research. Can you stop it? We could try. But if they've been transferring for hours, most of it is probably already gone. Amara looked at the screen, watching gigabytes of data flow away into the digital darkness. Years of illegal research, hundreds of victims' medical records, evidence that would be hidden, distributed, and used to continue the very programs they were trying to stop. Pull the plug, she said. That won't stop the transfer. It's redundant across multiple. I don't care. Pull every plug. Shut it all down. The agent looked at Garrett, who nodded. Within seconds, every laptop in the room went dark. Halvorsen laughed bitterly. Too late. The important data was transferred hours ago. You stopped nothing. Maybe, Amara said. But we stopped you. And we have enough evidence to trace where that data went. To find the others involved. This isn't over. No, Halvorsen agreed. It's not. They escorted him and Linda out through the tunnels and back into the hospital. The arrest happened in front of dozens of staff members, their faces shocked as the COO they'd worked under was led away in handcuffs. Linda was placed in a separate vehicle, still crying, still insisting she didn't know. Dr. Wallace appeared from somewhere in the crowd. He looked shaken, diminished. Is it true? What they're saying about the hospital? Yes, Garrett said simply. I had no idea. None of us did. Except you made it easy. Amara's voice was quiet but cutting. You focused on hierarchy and authority and never questioned why certain patients received different treatments. You were so busy protecting your ego that you missed a criminal conspiracy happening in your own ER. Wallace flinched. I owe you an apology. You owe a lot of people apologies. Start with the patients who died while you were worried about nurses overstepping. She walked away before he could respond. There was nothing more to say. The next several hours were a blur of statements, interviews, and documentation. Federal investigators took over multiple conference rooms. Staff were questioned individually. The hospital's board of directors was summoned for emergency meetings. News vans appeared outside, camera crews jostling for position. Amara sat in a small break room with Miguel and Leah, all three of them exhausted beyond words. Leah had dark circles under her eyes. Miguel's hands trembled slightly from adrenaline crash. Amara felt hollowed out, like she'd run a marathon and found nothing at the finish line. What happens now? Leah asked. Federal investigation, Amara said. They'll review every patient record, every medication order, every procedure done in this hospital for the past 6 years. Anyone who was part of the trials will be notified. Families of those who died will be contacted. And us. We'll testify, multiple times probably. Then we try to rebuild some version of normal. Miguel laughed without humor. Normal, right? Like that's possible after this. It has to be. Otherwise they win. A knock on the door interrupted them. Commander Garrett entered, looking as tired as they felt. Can we talk? Amara stood. Of course. They walked to an empty patient room. Garrett closed the door and sat heavily in the visitor's chair. The Navy wants you back. I figured. Not for operations. They know you're done with that. But they need someone who understands both sides. Military operations and civilian medical ethics. Someone who can help prevent something like this from happening again. What are you offering? Liaison position. You'd work with military medical programs to ensure proper oversight, ethical standards, informed consent protocols. Desk job mostly. Some travel. Good pay. Full benefits. And most importantly, you'd have the authority to shut down anything that crosses the line. Amara looked out the window at the city below. Lights scattered across the darkness like fallen stars. I became a nurse to save people. On my own terms. Without orders. I know. Taking a military position means following orders again. Being part of the system. It means changing the system from inside. Garrett leaned forward. Amara, you expose a conspiracy that's been running for years. You save lives by refusing to stay quiet. The Navy needs people like you. People who know when to disobey. That's not usually what the military wants. It's what we need. He pulled out a business card and set on the bedside table. Think about it. No pressure. But the offer stands. After he left, Amara picked up the card. Simple design. Contact information. a phone number she could call to change her life again. She thought about the past 6 years, the hiding, the quiet existence, the careful balance of staying invisible while trying to help people. She'd built a life as a nurse, and it had been good, meaningful, safe. But safe wasn't enough anymore. Not when she knew there were 15 other hospitals running the same programs. Not when there were dozens of trials still operating. Not when people were dying because someone decided their lives were acceptable losses. She'd spent 6 years saving people one at a time. Maybe it was time to save them by the hundreds. 3 weeks later, Amara stood in the same hospital hallway where she'd been humiliated, dismissed, and nearly killed. The building was under new management. Federal oversight had been established. Every medication, every procedure, every patient interaction was being monitored and reviewed. Dr. Wallace had resigned. Linda had been charged as an accessory, but given a plea deal in exchange for testimony. The nursing staff had been restructured, and the hospital that had been used as a criminal testing ground was slowly, painfully, learning to be legitimate again. Amara wore her Navy uniform for the first time in 6 years. The fabric felt strange, simultaneously foreign and familiar. Her rank insignia gleamed on her shoulder. The ribbon rack above her pocket told a story most people would never know. Miguel and Leah met her in the lobby. Miguel whistled low. "Look at you. All official. Don't get used to it. I'll be in civilian clothes most of the time." "But you took the job," Leah said. "I took the job. Good. Someone needs to make sure this doesn't happen again." They walked together toward the exit. Staff members paused to watch them pass. Some nodded respectfully. Others looked away, uncomfortable with the reminder of what had happened here. Near the door, Amara stopped. She turned to look back at the hospital, at the place where her two lives had collided and forced her to choose who she really was. "You okay?" Miguel asked. "Yeah." She touched the chain around her neck. Her dog tags hung there now, no longer hidden. "I spent 6 years trying to be invisible, trying to forget who I was. But you can't forget. You can only decide what to do with it. And what are you going to do? Make sure nobody else has to bury themselves to survive." They walked out into the sunlight together. Behind them, North Harbor Medical Center continued its work of healing, scarred but standing. And ahead of them, Amara Brooks carried the weight of her past and the promise of her future. No longer Ghost Actual the operator. No longer just a nurse trying to hide. She was both. She was neither. She was exactly who she needed to be. A month after the arrests, Amara sat in a military conference room reviewing her first case. A proposed research program involving performance enhancement for combat medics. The proposal was thorough, well-documented, and completely voluntary. But buried in the methodology was a clause about waiving certain informed consent requirements during active deployment. She picked up her phone and called the program director. "This is Dr. Brooks. I'm reviewing your proposal for the Combat Medic Enhancement Program." "Excellent. I hope you found it satisfactory." "I found Section 7.3 problematic. The waiver clause. That's standard language for field operations. It's standard language for abuse. I am recommending immediate revision. Full informed consent at all stages, regardless of deployment status. No exceptions." "Dr. Brooks, that's not realistic in combat situations." "Then we don't run the program in combat situations. We test, we verify, we ensure safety, and only then do we deploy. And everyone involved knows exactly what they're agreeing to." There was a long pause. "You're going to be difficult, aren't you?" "I'm going to be thorough. There's a difference." She hung up and made a note in the file. "Revision required. Do not approve until fixed." It was small work, bureaucratic work, but it mattered. Every proposal she reviewed, every program she scrutinized, every line of protocol she corrected was one less opportunity for someone to abuse the system. One less chance for another Operation Nightfall. The work was exhausting, frustrating, complicated. It was also exactly where she needed to be. That evening, Amara returned to her apartment and changed into comfortable clothes. She made tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker to life as darkness fell. Her phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. "Dinner next week? Leah wants to hear about your new job." She smiled and typed back. Sounds good. I'll bring stories. Another text, this one from Commander Garrett. First month evaluation complete. You're doing excellent work. Keep it up. She set the phone down and picked up the photograph she kept on her windowsill. It showed her team from 6 years ago, before the mission that destroyed them. Young faces, confident smiles, no idea what was coming. David Wright was in the photo. Marcus Williams, too. The teammate who died in her arms. The commander they'd lost. All of them gone now, except her. I'm still here, she whispered to the photograph. And I'm making sure it meant something. She set the photo down gently and looked out at the city again. Somewhere out there, 15 hospitals were being investigated. Dozens of programs were being shut down. Hundreds of victims were getting answers. And thousands of future patients would be protected because she'd refused to stay invisible. The quiet nurse they'd mocked had found her voice. The operative they'd buried had returned on her own terms. And Amara Brooks, neither ghost nor civilian, neither soldier nor victim, had finally figured out who she was supposed to be. Someone who saved lives. Someone who told the truth. Someone who knew that the hardest battles weren't fought with weapons, but with the courage to stand up and demand better. She finished her tea and turned on the lights. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new challenges, new fights against systems that valued results over people. But tonight, she could rest. She'd earned it. The woman they'd tried to break had become unbreakable, and the name they'd buried had finally become her own again. When someone risks everything to expose the truth, are we brave enough to stand with them? Or do we look away because it's safer? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of courage, justice, and redemption.